My name is Peter Cinnamon and you're very welcome to this. It's a podcast and it's all about the Irish League, where the race for the automatic European place goes to the final day as Lorne slayed a young blue side and Glentoran faltered once again. Cliftonville meanwhile slip up at Portadown but remain on course to secure 7th, but it's the championship which headlines the pod this week. Bangor are officially back in the big time and United are in the box seat for a Carrick Rangers showdown, and Newry City succumb to a second relegation in as many seasons. It's another weekly edition of your fave. It's Kick a Match. Some people may say that the end of this season has lost a tiny bit of fire, but right here on this podcast, we're still bringing out the big guns. He's a writer, he's a reporter, and he's a man that I like to call the Professor. Hello, Barry Flynn.
Good evening, Peter. Hope you're well.
I'm good. I mean, we are almost there at the final moments of this season. Of course, the Irish Cup is truly like the final moment, and then there is the afters of the European playoffs. But I ask you this. We've had such a fun ride throughout the season in the top flight, and of course the championship has delivered its crescendo of excitement as it's starting to become on the regular. For you, do you remember a season in the same ilk where it all sped up and then has dissipated in the way that the past maybe 5 to 4 weeks have?
For the last 5 weeks, you're absolutely right, Peter. It has been bordering on the excruciating. Now, way back in the good old days, whenever David Jeffrey had Linfield flying in the early noughties, OBE, over by Easter, was the mantra. And you know yourself from Sports Sound's point of view, we always want to get it to the final day, 2 games taking place on either side of wherever, and you want to have a goal here, a goal there, and it's swinging. But it's been very hard for me to sort of get any sort of real interest into the race for the second place. And I know that for the teams involved, it is that. So my fallback place has always been the championship. And it was another exciting extravaganza of an event on Saturday. Bangor eventually got over the line. They were stuttering and staggering, a bit like Portadown last season. They had plenty of defeats along the way, and Bangor have had 8 defeats, which to me is 23% of their games. So it shows that, unlike Linfield that have run away with the Premiership, the Championship was more competitive. But in the longer term, you have to ask yourself the question, is that competitive in the Championship? How will that transform into the Premiership for Bangor in next season? No, Portadown, they did a lot of work over the summer and they've acquitted themselves very well. But my judging of Bangor is that, yes, it's a side that needs a lot of work to be done. But the occasion on Saturday was second to none. Big crowd at the Blanchflower Stadium, and they got over the line. They were the better team on the day, and the scenes were super.
Yes, you have become Mr. Championship over the past 2 years, and I think the lead story is that despite their fumbles along the way in recent times, Bangor is once again a top flight team, a team on the up, a team and a club who have been down and in the dumps. The ascension of Bangor from where they were, from whatever the technical term was, liquidity, bankruptcy, all those things in between, they're back in the big time, and they have had an incredible season, even in cup competitions, and that must have been an unbelievable moment for all them. And I'm sure there's been plenty who have followed their journey from below the Irish League in the past 10 years. The last time they're in the top flight was back in the very first iteration of this 12-team top flight that we now have, and they're back up amongst it come next season.
Yeah, back in 2009 they made the decision that they weren't going to be going into the Premiership, and that was the start of a decline which ultimately saw them in the Ballymena League. It reminds me of Newry City in a way, because Newry City plunged right through that league system, and then they were reborn. And the pity and the sadness is that Newry have gone down now from the Championship, and Darren Mullen has stepped aside. So there's a club that is in deep danger. But to me, Bangor, it seems to be a vision. It seems to be a business plan in the background. It's a different Bangor because I can see that they've bought into the local community. I recall going to see Bangor many's a time in the Premiership, and besides Boxing Day against Ards or whoever, it was Clannyboy was a very sad place to be. There was a few fans at it, but I've been to the last three Bangor games up at Limavady. The home game against Anna United at Clannyboy, which was a marvellous occasion, a carnival occasion, which fell flat on its face because Anna do what Anna do in the last number of weeks. And on Saturday, yes, they literally packed out the Blanche Flower, but it is a club reborn. It's a club with a great grounding, a great administration there in the background. And yeah, over the summer, I would imagine there will be some surgery done to that Bangor side because they know it's going to be difficult. The first thing you need to do in the Premiership is consolidate your place. Look at Loughgall, they did it, but then they couldn't sustain that. And Bangor have what I think Loughgall and Newry did not have is have that history and also that serious potential of fans in the North Down area. Of course, it is now the city of Bangor, and beyond Belfast, I don't see any other city, maybe Institute up in the Northwest, punching in the Premier Division. So, yeah, interesting times ahead, but I must take my hat off to them. They've been a joy to watch all season. Ben Arthurs, he showed such perseverance on Saturday to hook across that ball for Michael Morgan to head home the winner. And I think that just personified it. And the tackling them did in the second half. Yeah, fair play to them, but they will need to tweak before the season's coming up.
You mentioned their history over the years and broadly during the 21st century outside of that flurry in the first league of the top flight 12 team league. They have not been threatening or really hasn't been a big presence in the top flight. And you talked about it there as well. Bangor is a big catchment area. It's probably one of the few areas that you would say hasn't been able to exploit the potential population that is there to the fullest extent. Due to their lack of success, how many Bangorians are tied to another club and how much they want to switch allegiance, we'll have to see. But they're a team that can draw upon that base, and when next season they're playing top flight football and Glentoran, Linfield, Cliftonville, everybody else come to town, that could be a real attraction for fans who've maybe not given that team a go, something to get a bit of civic pride about. And they've drawn in players, and as much as geography in Northern Ireland shouldn't be as much of a big deal as it often is, Bangor, not too far from Belfast, can draw from all areas in that. So you could imagine that when there's going to be plenty of teams putting out feelers and saying, come be one of our main men, Bangor could be a very attractive proposition next season and beyond.
Well, very, very much so, because as I said, there's a vision there at the club and there's a very strong boardroom. And what was noticeable for me throughout the season was the number of young people who have bought into this footballing dream. Some people might scoff and say North Down is a rugby heartland, but Bangor have always had the potential to bring many, many supporters. In fact, you looked at the semi-final, the number of people that they brought to Seaview, but throughout the hiatus for Bangor, the high point was 2013 when they won the Steel and Sons Cup. They beat Larne in the final on Christmas Eve at Seaview, and I think that was a sellout, complete sellout. It was two towns, and we know what Larne has done in terms of tapping into that big town scenario. And if you look at YouTube, you'll see it was under Frankie Wilson, I do believe, that Bangor won the Steel and Sons Cup. But even though they were out of top flight football, the number of people that turned up in the yellow and blue that day was remarkable, as it was on Saturday, as it was in the Irish Cup semi-final. So the problem is with Clannyboy Park, in my view, next season, is that you've got a core base there of Bangorians, as we would call them. When Linfield and Glentoran come there, that place will be packed to the gills, and that is great income for the club, and that's what they were dreaming of. and it's a nice tight ground. It needs a bit of work done, but hopefully they'll get their share from the investment fund that's up at Stormont. But they have a bit of dream at the far side to get a all singing, all dancing, all seated grandstand there, which would really set Clandy off. But this is all part of the incremental way in which Bangor are doing it. And they put out a statement last night, Peter, in relation to, yes, we've got back to the Premiership. That is only stage one of what we're doing. They have it all set out about what they need to do. And key to that is tapping into the community and getting that place in the Premiership tied down.
Perhaps what they have going into next year, and there'll be lots said about this aspect of this side going in to that season, is that what they do have, and it's unproven in the top flight, but goals broadly hasn't been something that they have struggled for. They have Arthurs. MacArthur's a tricky little player. They've added in Matthew Ferguson to add that extra bit of juice going forward. And they've added that experience that helped them get across the line. I'm talking about Robbie Garrett and others. So there's no doubting, and I think the way the season has ended will highlight the fact that they need investment going into this top flight, because this is going to be a more competitive top flight than we have maybe ever seen, and there's even teams that will likely finish 10th and 9th next year who are going to invest heavily to push forward. How to Bangor balance all of that whilst also not totally breaking the bank for what could be a one and done season. To talk about the teams that have missed out there, the Welders, Limavady, those were the chasing pack up until the past month or so. We'll talk about Anna, but for the Welders, what has happened here? Because they too have some great players on the ball. Without it, they have invested in this side, perhaps a bit inexperienced in some key areas in the team, but they're now on the outside looking in when it comes to that promotion relegation playoff place. They wanted to be going up as champions. That's now not going to happen, and it could all fall apart where they are, where Bangor were this time last season, having to play another year in the championship and don't even get another go at it through a two-legged playoff.
I think Paul Key's reaction on Saturday, he's more or less resigned that Anna United are the side in the box seat. What I can gather is that there's been a lot of investment in the Welders, and it was based on the presumption or the hope that they would get into the top division. There's also that theory that Tiernan O'Connor leaving in January did not help the cause. And it was discussed on Friday night. Michael Clark and David Jeffrey were discussing, has he been that added edge? Missing from the side, have they lacked that added edge to get over the line? Since O'Connor's gone, they've still got Josh Key, great player. They got Michael McClellan back from Dundela. He scored a few goals, but that if question in relation to Tiernan O'Connor is still hovering over the Blanchflower Stadium and coming so near. Last week, for example, I saw them beat Dundela. They showed great heart to come back. Liam Mullen, who's on loan from Newry City, he scored the winner in the 92nd minute, and I thought this was going to turn their season around. They're going to be actually going gung-ho for Bangor. It was a very competitive game on Saturday. Bangor won it by the one goal, which they did in November at the same ground, and they got over the line. And you ask yourself the question, where does that leave the Welders at this stage? Because the dream of the champion or the Premiership is over, in my view, for another season. I could be proved wrong. But if, for example, they did get into a playoff, I would be sceptical about over two legs whether Harlan and Wolf Welders would be able to do that. Now, the strange thing about that hotbed of football, which is Mid-Ulster round by Portadown, is that what Anna United have done with 7 wins in a row, it is remarkable, and fair play to Kieran McGurgan for doing that. If they do get to a playoff situation against Carrick Rangers, in my honest opinion, they would be best placed to cause that upset, particularly if they get the first leg down at the BMG Arena. But the issue to me is that I feel, Peter, that there is indeed a gap. Now, we talk about the gap in the Premiership between the top six and the bottom six. I think it is a serious gap between the Championship and the Premiership. And that is based on the fact that the two Irish Cup semi-finals this year, I watched them. Ards played Cliftonville and Bangor played Dungannon. The difference for me watching that is the ability of the Premiership teams to pass the ball and be patient, whereas it was more gung ho. If you look at the night that Bangor beat Glentoran, to me it was a bit gung ho the way that they just attacked the Glens, whereas Cliftonville and Dungannon had that little bit of know-how that the championship clubs may not have, and that was the difference. And that is something that I feel Bangor will acquit themselves well next season, given the plans in the background. But the Bangor that won the championship this season, I think, would struggle very badly in the actual Premiership because it is a different step up. It is a different league, in my view, and there's a bit of know-how amongst everybody in the Premiership playing against each other, and it's that higher standard of football. And I think the Premier or the Championship clubs, if they do go up, need to tweak and adjust. And I say that with Bangor losing 8 games this season. They lost to Newry City. They lost to the Welders 4-1 up there. So they were not impregnable. And that's why I would not fear for the championship. I just believe that the standard in there, certain players would be picked to go into the Premiership. But if you look at the championship next season, there's no real side that would have what you would call a large support base. We had Portadown last season, which was good because they brought their fans home and away. And this season we had Bangor. But you've got Warrenpoint Town going up, and then you've got Loughgall coming down from the Premiership under Darren. So the league next year in the Championship is going to be very strange. Ours are the only ones I would look at as having a prominent, decent fan base. So it's in my view, you're losing when you lose that fan base from the Championship. So it'll be interesting to see next season for both Bangor in the Premiership and how the Championship, as a more level league, in my view, will, how that will all pan out over the season.
Two things can be true at the same time, can't they? We can look at the championship and say that the quality of the play, the standard of some of the top teams is as good as perhaps it's ever been. But we can also say that and say that perhaps the gap between the best in the championship and the bottom teams in the top flight is bigger than it's been in previous years. And with Bangor going up next year, and you spoke there about the fan base. You see the numbers. They hit over 1,000 on occasions this year, which would do very, very well next year. They will be bringing many more fans home and away than at Loughgall would have done on the regular. But it's on the pitch where these games are won, and they've been out of that division for so long. How will they react to it? They will be buoyed by their success over Glentoran and how they approached that game, but that was a one-off cup game. And for the past 2 seasons, when you go Loughgall, Portadown, maybe add in that Newry year, but Newry did flirt more on their first season up from the top flight with relegation. They've come in and they've shocked people, and they've done very, very well. I still think that the teams in the league from 2 years ago and the teams now, even just look at what we have in the standings, Glenavon are going to finish 10th, and their team is training 3 times, have got some real good quality players, and are hoping to bounce back next year if they can get the right investment. Ballymena, you saw the outlet, maybe that'll click next year. Portadown, they will be buoyed by how well they did, but they will also want to take that next step. And look at the way Cliftonville have reacted since missing out. So who of these teams are going to fall away if Bangor are going to say we're going to finish 10th? So it will be tough. What can they learn from the other teams that have come up? I mean, Loughgall came in as actually what people forget, historically a brilliant championship side. They had that togetherness and they played exciting football with players who just completely shell shocked a number of teams when other sides maybe around there were at a low ebb. Newry had something similar, but again didn't have the absolute quality. We can see where the likes of James Teelan and McGovern have moved on, that there was still quality in that team, and there is quality in this Bangor side. So going in, I think they'll be attractive. They'll get the investment, but the level of investment and the results to get there may be difficult. And Portadown invested, Shane McCartan, Aaron McCary, the likes of UKEC and Ubacan have come out and have been successful. Do they have that network? I think a lot of eyes will be on Bangor. You absolutely cannot rule them out as dead ducks, because we've seen what both Portadown and Vlog done in previous years. But going then, as congratulations Bangor, super exciting. I think their fans won't care. They'll be delighted to be rubbing shoulders with all these teams next year. So it's not confirmed, but it's looking likely that Anna United are going to be rewarded for their immense form, hitting their stride at exactly the right time. Is that 6 or 7 in a row that they've now claimed wins on the bounce?
Seven wins in a row. I said I was down at
Amazing.
Clondy last week, and the game turned on the sending off of Kyle Owens. Anna were 2-1 down, but they literally passed. They were fluid, they were fluent, and Murray up front just superb. But we're talking about investment, Peter, and there was a great conversation on Saturday on Sports Sound. Joel had a number of pundits on, and Joel made the point about the investment. It was in the context of Cliftonville and the fans voting for this merger or whatever it is. And Joel says for all the investment in Coleraine and Glentoran and Larne and whatever, Linfield still won the title by 23 points. And that is a glaring, indictment of local soccer, because we talk about Ballymena, we talk about Portadown, buying players, bringing them in, but are we bringing them in just to sustain a position in a league, or are we bringing them in technically to take over the mantle that Linfield and Larne in the last couple of years have actually, laid down? Because before this year, we know for the last number of years, you could have picked the top 6 and the bottom 6 before the actual ball was kicked in the season. And I look at Newry going out, and I look at Loughgall, the way they fell away in the second season. Sustainable input and sustainable investment into the clubs. And you look at who are the clubs that can do this, and Linfield are head and shoulders above everybody at this stage. When Linfield won the league, you talk about Bangor and this stepped phase. Linfield are now looking at Europe because they saw what Larne did. They know what the return will be financially if they can get into that group stage. Larne fell apart they fell apart in the middle part of the season because I think the games came thick and fast, and it was hard to concentrate on Europe and then the league. And then that whole scenario has been well discussed. But 23 points, Peter, for a club to win a local soccer league before before Easter is a big statement. And it also sends out a big statement to every other club about the standard that they need to get to compete with Linfield. And for clubs like Glentoran, Larne, Coleraine, and now Cliftonville, you're wondering, can they do that? We shall see. But the fact that Linfield won it by so much this season is really notable in my books.
So Anna's in the driver's seat. They play Ards this Saturday, and if they win, they've got it nailed down. They'll be in that promotion relegation playoff. I mean, they could draw and the Welders win, but goal difference is as such. There is a 5 goal swing there, so it would need to be a big old thumping of the game for the Welders for them to get as many goals as that, and then Anna take care of Ards. So Limavady, they miss out completely this year. I mean, it was a surprise in a sense that they ran it so close. I thought they were going to be dark horses in the sense that they came off the back of a really good year in the PIL, kept that team, added a few more players, were one of the other winners outside of Ballymena to add to that squad from the massive Coleraine exodus as they transferred into full-time football. Likely to be dark horses again next year, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would imagine. I would love to see Anna United in a playoff coming up. I believe they would be going. There's some agreement maybe with Shamrock Park for them to play their home games. It's a joy to go down there. They've been there or thereabouts. But what is notable, and if I was Carrick Rangers, I would be very wary of the fact that they had put together Anna United this unbelievable run. And the problem for the championship all season is that Bangor would fall. There was no team below that could put together that 3-4 game run of wins, which would have really given Bangor that sort of shock to their system. I don't think Bangor were off the top for vast majority of the season, but Kieran McGurkin's side always seem to have that left in the tank coming up towards the end of the season. And 7 wins, and now they go in against Ards. They'd be hot favourites. Last day of the season, I mean, Ards have literally nothing to play for, which is one of the sad things about the final day of the season. And it would be noted by the Welders that Ards will go up there playing for pride or whatever. Um, if Ireland do it in a two leg playoff against Carrick Rangers, as I say, get them at the BMG Arena first and foremost. Try and get a result and see what is up at Taylor's Avenue. But if Carrick Rangers were to go down, that would be another real um, not a disaster. It would be a disaster for the club to go down, but it would be another key name that had a bit of a support that you'd be losing from the Premiership. It's the scenario that I think the Carrick board do not want to even think about at this stage. They're thinking ahead through Stephen Baxter. They know this game's coming up. If it is on a United, I would be very fearful for them. So that's interesting. It's been a number of years, Peter, since I can't put my finger on it, since the Championship side has prevailed in a playoff against a Premiership side. And I point again to the Irish Cup semi-final. It's both Ards and Bangor, they were left adrift from the two Premiership clubs. And it'll be interesting to see whether Carrick will have that edge over perhaps Anna. We shall see, but it would be a disaster locally for Carrick Fergus, for Carrick Rangers to go down.
Oftentimes in those games, you'll talk about well experience. You've got the side in the top flight who have played the bigger games, and what could it mean then going against this championship side who, yes, they've got nothing to lose, but they've had this big, tough, rough and tumble season, and then they go up against potentially the best quality side that they'll have. But when you talk about experience, Anna United, now they haven't seen victory in any of these, but that's going to be now 3 if they secure it. 3 out of the last 4 seasons they will have qualified for this promotion relegation playoff. They lost to Portadown in their first one, which was a close game.
Right, yeah.
They almost shocked Dungannon in what was a weird bonkers game where half the players were on the beach a couple of days beforehand. They missed out last year, just as you are well aware, because of they had a late flurry last year, and they probably go into this one, if they do get it, of course, in the best form you possibly could be. And as I've alluded to on previous episodes of this podcast, what makes them so dangerous is their free-flowing, attacking play. They've got experience in the likes of Stephen Murray up top, but I like parts of this team, and they'll go into this with Kieran McGurkin knowing what these games feel like, and how they haven't went this way in previous times. And you're right, Carrick Rangers will need to not feel the pressure as much as they could, because if they go 1-0, 2-0 down across any point of these two legs, you can name the quality players, Heatley and Gibson and Curtis Allen and Cushley, who could get them out of a hole. But that has not been the way this season's turned out for them, and it's just not the team you want to face from a Carrick Rangers point of view.
Yeah, the statistics for Carrick look very bad. 7 wins all season, and they changed manager at the start of the season. You talk about that game last year. It's amazing how it's like a closing doors moment. I was at the BMG Arena, and Portadown were getting their trophy presented, but they were playing Institute, and Institute scored in the time added on, I believe, and the word filtered across as Ballymena and as Bangor and Anna, either one of them with a victory would have went into that playoff scenario. And because of that sucker punch at the end, Institute went into the playoff scenario. And I'm just wondering, maybe last year was a bit too soon for Bangor, But Anna United last year could have been in that position. And I know psychologically it's a big barrier if they do get there. Of course, we're saying if they do get there. It is a big barrier, but I've seen something different, and I watched them at Clannyboy Park last week. A belief, a togetherness, tactical play, speed, and ability to take goals. Now to go up there to Bangor when they were literally just waiting to the flags were out, the balloons were out, and they just played so professionally. They took the lead. They conceded 2 goals, but then they got the penalty and they went on to win the game against 10-man Bangor. So it was no mean feat to go up to Clandyboy and spoil the party, which is what they did. And this is why I'm thinking if Anna do take care of ours on Saturday and do get there, we could see a different Anna coming out for a playoff. And I would be slightly worried if I was Carrick Rangers, because Carrick have not have well, they've been playing games, week in, week out, but they knew they were going to be in this position from weeks back. And how do you motivate and lift the side again to come in against a side which could theoretically have 8 wins on the trot, and regardless of whether they're championship teams, these are 8 wins, and nothing succeeds like success on the field. So that is very interesting in my view, Peter. And as I say, on Saturday, I could see Anna just going to do it, and then they'll refocus. They know what they need to do. They've been there, and I don't hope. Well, I'm just saying it wouldn't be a surprise to me if they do get up to the Premiership.
I would agree with you there, and that Carrick result against Loughgall, I believe, only further establishes my worry, because they're not a million miles away kind of team, playing out on the ground, fast attacking, trying to get it up to somebody tricky up top and catch you on the counter. But before we get into that, you talk about surprises. At the start of the season, I wonder if you felt as though this was a potential reality. Newry do the double, and not the good kind, season upon season. They make it 2 relegations on the bounce, and they now return to playing intermediate football in the PIL after losing to Newington, who had in the past number of weeks edged ahead of Newry thanks to a number of late goals on their part. And then it was looking pretty grim after last week's results, just with the way things turned out. But the one thing Newry had to do was win on Saturday. They lose, and they're out of the championship. It's been a torrid 2 years for that club.
It's always been one of my favourite grounds to go to. Very welcoming. Dorothy Taylor always there, and people like Jerry and Laura. They are the backbone of that club. They bleed blue and white, and to me, it's like adding insult to injury. You lose your place in the Premiership after putting so much effort in, and now you're into the Intermediate League. And strangely enough, I noticed when I was down a couple of times that Newry seemed to have been getting a bit of interest around the city, and it really is a punch to the stomach. And I'm just wondering where they go from here, because can they do that again? Can they be reborn? Can they come back? And I always say that the test of a team and a club is can they come back from adversity? But it must be sickening. And it's amazing too. You talk about Newington, the transformation through Jay Donnelly. It's amazing that one player can come in, score the goals, and he must inspire the rest of that side. And that's very interesting. On Saturday, if they beat Ballyclare Comrades, they stay up. And it looks like Ballyclare could be in the playoff at the bottom. So it shows you what one player can do to a side. But Newry, it's going to be very hard to take for the Showgrounds club. And yeah, going to miss my little trips down to Newry.
It's a mini playoff in itself, that Newington game against Ballyclare. And when you see transfers like the Jay Donnelly one to Newington in January, a huge part of that was getting down, finding your feet again, and finding a bit of form. It oftentimes doesn't work out exactly that way. On this occasion, it has. We don't know what Jay Donnelly's future in football looks like, but he has done no harm. If there was question marks around his ability to score goals and make an impact on a football game, yes, it's in the championship, and I doubt that's ideally the level of football he would like to be playing next year. But he has very much helped his stock rise. And we often talk about it on this podcast. Where are the strikers? There's Jay Donnelly proving that he could be one, and it might be again with Glentoran next year, but he could be a sought after name. The thing that makes this taste even better for Newry is that the team that's going to be automatically replacing them in the championship is Warren Point. If you said to Newry next season you're not going to be in the same division as Warren Point, this was literally the one scenario they did not want.
Yeah, that's an additional sort of sickening point. The point about Jay Donnelly is Jay Donnelly wasn't getting on the field for Glentoran, but Jay Donnelly's a fantastic footballer. But is it an indictment on the championship of the standard that Jay could come in and literally has turned into a wonder goal scorer, and the opposition he's playing against compared to the Premier League is of a lower standard, and he has excelled. And I think the bottom six within the championship compared to the top six, there is a gap there too. But the way that he has turned Newington round and led from the front, it shows you the standard that Jay Donnelly has and the standard that he's been playing at. And he was able to bring that to the lower echelons of the championship. And he's got them now on the cusp of survival. And it's fair play to him and fair play to Newington.
Why do you feel from the times that you watch them this year that Newry are in a position where they're completely out of the championship? The only game that I saw them this year was their match against Carrick in the Irish Cup, which was a bonkers ding dong game, which I very much enjoyed. But the scoreline of that potentially hints for anybody what happened here. They were just way too lucky at the back.
Yeah.
For the second year in a row.
Yeah, the last time I saw them was Atlanta United about 6 or 7 weeks ago. They lost 4-1. To me, watching that side, once they went a goal down, 2 goals down, and it just went into a different gear. And there was 2 own goals in that game, which to me summed up Newry's predicament. They were 2 comical own goals. Anna were just a different class altogether, and it showed. And I just felt there wasn't that togetherness. There was a bit of resignation about the Newry side that day, and you could tell that it just wasn't the Newry of old. And now it's into the Premier Intermediate League, and where does that leave Newry? That's the big question. It's all about money, Peter, as you know. Is there going to be money going in to attract some players and to try and get them to bounce back? We don't know. But yeah, Newry's position didn't lie, bottom of the table. And but they did beat Bangor, of course, down there, which shows you the potential on a Friday night in at the showgrounds. They had the players, but they couldn't sustain it, and that was the ultimate, downfall.
Darren Mullen steps away again after he stepped away before the start of the season before last. Gary Boyle took over there. He is the man that has led Warren Point back into the championship. I saw a stat there about how they didn't lose a game at home all year. Truth be, yes, Newry did concede a lot of goals, but its scoring was also a massive problem, as it usually is for teams that go down. By all accounts, they scored the least amount of goals in that division, and almost half, they scored 46. Almost half of them, 20 goals, was scored by a player called Ryan McNichol. I've talked about him on this podcast before. I like him. Big player. Now he's 26, so he's not some sort of teenage sensation, and that's, I think he played for Distillery previously, but when there's teams maybe near the bottom of the Irish League looking for a player, I just think maybe he'll stick around next year for Newry, but if there's teams sniffing around him, I can see why, because he scored 20 goals, but also he can drag other players into the game and be that kind of bustling big man. But at PIL, there's one more game to go, I believe. It's unassailable for Dollingstown to sneak up, and Dollingstown are going to be in that playoff relegation game. Oh, actually, no, hold on. Rathryland could sneak it because based on a couple of games. But look, the team that will be Newington or Ballyclare, so that'll be an interesting fixture again. If Newington get out of it, congratulations to them. But if they don't, that would probably be a surprise just for some of the players they've brought in, that if they don't see off whatever PIL team go up. But before we go into some of the games from this weekend, the big news over the past 7 days relates to Cliftonville. It came out a number of weeks ago. Actually, it was first meeting happened on the Monday after the League Cup final success. It has been agreed. Cliftonville now have new ownership, changing decades of tradition in that club. Fans pass it through, the ones that have a stake in it, and Cliftonville's about to enter a brand new era.
Yeah, and about time, 88%. So I'm assuming what was actually put before the members was acceptable. Of course, it was acceptable, but I'm assuming that that investment, which I think it was talked about in Saturday, is in the millions. It was acceptable to the club, was acceptable to the shareholders. So there must be ambition, there must be plans there, and there must be a step-by-step process. So we'll see Cliftonville in the Irish Cup final in 2 weeks' time. They'll pack out Windsor with the Red Army. This is what was discussed about the potential that was there. Now you've got Canadians coming in, putting the money in. There's a lot of work needs done to Cliftonville. Biggest and most glaring thing at Solitude is the stand. The old stand needs to come down, and you need to get something there. So there are two things there which need to be addressed. One is the infrastructure, and the other is keeping the team competitive on the field. We do recall, of course, Cliftonville were the last club to give up their amateur status in 1972. So traditionally, they were always very parsimonious when it came to money. But now we're into a different era. And maybe the potential from that Irish Cup win last season has shown what Cliftonville can do. But also, let's look at it too. I mean, you've seen Cliftonville the last number of days, last number of weeks. They're playing in the lower part of the lower six. Solitude behind the goal. I always look when it's on TV, and you can tell how many people are there by just looking at the stand behind the goal. And there's been quite a few empty spaces. And I will actually say this as a warning too, because okay, we're in a different era with Cliftonville, and attendances are going up across the Irish League. But in 1979, 1980, 1981, Cliftonville's Red Army, there was 4,000 or 5,000 at Solitude every week. But whenever the club did not become competitive, it just drifted away like snow off a ditch. And there was a famous occasion where they played Glasgow Celtic in a friendly in 1984, and there was 10,000 people at Solitude. But on the following Saturday, the opening day of the season, there was 150 people there to see Cliftonville play Distillery. So how do you keep and maintain that level of support and input from the supporters? It's obviously they've bought into it. There's money there. Let's see how it goes. But a win in the Irish Cup on the 4th of May will, put the icing on the cake for Cliftonville, but it's going forward now. Let's see how the club now can build on the recent success and to maintain any sort of support they have and to invest in that ground. Also, you do recall, Peter, that they did win the Irish League 2013, 2014, I believe, and Solitude was packed out, the old stand was packed out, but then that support base did fall away for a while, and they would be third in the latest statistics after Linfield and Glentoran. And Marshall Gillespie put the statistics up. It's about 1,600 per game. Okay, where can you grow that? Now, Joel Taggart said on Saturday, and I thought he was very, very correct in what he says. What is there for the investors in these clubs? Because if they're business people, they're putting money in looking to get a profit. Now, to what extent can you push a club like Cliftonville to when it becomes a seriously profitable club for shareholders and on the field and off the field? It remains to be seen, but I thought it was a very key question Joel put. It's about, could apply to Glentoran, could apply to Larne, and could apply to Coleraine. The people putting them in, what return is there for them? I mean, what can they get back out potentially from their investment? And to me, you would need to have Cliftonville getting 3,500 at every home game before this becomes the dream that business consortium can really realize from.
A part of it that probably doesn't get talked about is the real estate that you have when you are a club. That solitude is the real estate that Cliftonville reside on, and when you do take on a club like that, like look, there is going to be millions of pounds given out to clubs in this country to update grounds, and then that is going to be in the possession of the people that run those clubs. So you may see that as, wow, all of a sudden we can get a stadium that is then funded, that we can then try and exploit in different ways. And perhaps when we look at our stadia within this country, we don't see it in the same way that perhaps other people view it, in a way to, often concerts and stuff like that are the things that get pointed to, but there may be other ways to draw in cash. There's also the idea that, like any sort of property purchase, you buy it at a certain price, it will then increase in value. How will it increase in value? Well, through fans coming in through the door, commercial revenues, and this fabled, let's say, big TV deal that may be a couple of years down the line, or what is being pushed could be the next step in the evolution of the Irish League long term, a part of a bigger league that's all Ireland. Talking about Cliftonville as a proposition and a potential business, we saw the takeover of Larne and them increase the amount of fans that have go to their games and have been very successful on the pitch and earn money other ways. The Glentoran takeover, investment there. Coleraine is this new project where they think they can draw in more fans and be a super club in a part of the world that they're in. I think there's an argument here, and it's relatively a well-trodden one, that actually, as a club with potential to grow, Cliftonville is one that has very, very fertile ground. You mentioned the attendance there. You have to remember that it's capped. So the amount of times where they've sold out and they couldn't increase the amount of people in their ground, that then isn't offset the same way, where there's maybe 300 people not turn up, or 400 people not turn up for a Tuesday night, a more quieter game. But from the culture, which is very unique around Cliftonville, from the overall draw that other people maybe don't see, a connection to their own local club, they see that maybe Cliftonville would draw them in as this central Belfast club, its connection to its community and its heritage. There is, and it's yet to be seen, growth opportunity for Cliftonville to be number two in the size of club within Northern Ireland, within the Irish League. Let's be fair.
Many a year ago, I spoke to David Begley, and it was after the 2009 Irish Cup final. And it was against Crusaders. There was 9,000 at it, and a big turnout of Cliftonville fans. And David was explaining that in this day and age, to an extent, things like cup finals become events, they become one-off carnival events. And you see the way Cliftonville sold out their proportion within, what, I don't know, 6 minutes or something like that for this year's Irish Cup final. But you ask yourself the question, where are those fans week in, week out at Solitude? If the Solitude is capped at 2,800 or whatever it is, for these 12,000 people who will go to the Irish Cup final, how do you get them interested in going to a game on a Tuesday night when Dungannon Swifts are coming up to play in a League Cup tie? That is the incongruous jump and leap of faith that I think people investing into local soccer are taking, in that the Carnival one-off cup final event, which will get people out in their thousands, is a one-off, but the bread and butter is week in, week out in the league. And that must be one thing that's within that plan, as to how do you get those fans coming through the gate, get the younger people engaged, which there are at Solitude in their hundreds. But this thing about, if you build it, they will come. And this is a warning to a lot of clubs in the Irish League, because one of the best grounds in local soccer is actually on the Suffolk Road. It's the ground of Donegal Celtic. Sport NI paid for two serious stands to be put in there in around about 2009, 2010, when they were in the Premiership. Now, those stands are sitting vacant, and they were state-of-the-art stands, and they must hold about 800 people between them. Donegal Celtic never got that buy-in from the community, and there was also other things going on in the background, and they have plunged into that Ballymena League. So, sitting in that ground are two pristine stands, and if that money comes from central government to build stands for certain clubs, you're wondering it's more about building the stand and building the facilities. It's about getting people interested in the product that you're putting on the line. And the people who have put the money into Cliftonville must believe that they can transform that. But a wet November Saturday afternoon when Ards, no offence to Ards or sort of Limavady or championship clubs I'm talking about there, but Glenavon or whoever are coming up the Solitude, when there's not a lot at stake and the club is not performing, is going to be difficult to maintain. And I'm saying that through history, Peter. I'm talking about the difference between those who go to the final on the 4th of May and those who will not be at Solitude throughout the season. So that potential's there, but how do you attract people week in, week out over and above what are going or bought into this so far?
We don't know for sure, but a part of this investment will potentially see this team go full time, and with all the trappings that come with that, will that help increase the level of success they're in? Perhaps not. This is a team that dropped out of the top six for the first time in many a year, off the back of that success in the Irish Cup last year. I mean, if they add investment, would that stop some of the players that left last summer leave? We don't know. Could it attract a higher level of player? You would imagine so. I mean, that has to be a part of why you'd want to go full time. There is no doubt an element of this is that if you want to keep up with the Joneses, that full-time football is likely to be a part of that, and maybe returning to that second place, third place finish that they'll want to get to and then push on. That is a likely thing. You talk about facilities, there's no doubt facilities is a part of the success that Larne has seen, bringing in fans. That maybe is weighing this year when success on the pitch hasn't been the same. Cliftonville would have a strong standard of stadia for fans to go and enjoy, and they've been able to also draw in fans from their area, and they have invested hard. So going in the next year, you have a lot of competition. Will Larne bounce back? Linfield are coming off the back of a really strong points total. Glentoran will want to come in at it again. And then here comes Cliftonville and the other teams around there. So it's going to be a story we'll have to keep a strong eye on. And I mean, every single one of these takeovers that we've seen, and they can have a variety of success rate based on just how you measure it. But we will just have to see how this pans out.
Yeah, I'm just a bit of a grumpy skeptic sometimes. I always think we're quoting the life of Brian, and it's that famous one about I know he's the Messiah because I have followed enough. There's no magic wand in local soccer, and okay, the Coleraine question next year is going to be interesting. Let's see. But I look at Larne. If Larne were not fighting for a playoff position at this stage of the season, I wonder how many people would have been at Inver Park for the Linfield game last Friday evening, because sometimes it's like a house of cards. And I have been at Larne in the bad days of 50 and 60 people at Inver Park. The dream came along, the dream brought them into Europe. But how strong is that underbelly that has brought great joy to the fans have bought into it? But yeah, I just wonder what is sustainable in local soccer given the limited fan base that we have. I know it's growing, but the other attractions are there too, Peter. But it's interesting, and businessmen will not put their money in unless they feel that there is going to be some sort of return. So let's just say it's interesting times.
You're right. We do not know truly how all these teams will level out. Are we on the cusp of something akin to the multitude of sticky and ugly situations in the League of Ireland, or are we on a new reality where they've found a way for stability. The amount of money being spent or being touted is at a level that we've never seen in the league before, and how that all works out when it comes to the spreadsheets, well, I don't know, and perhaps I don't want to know. Cliftonville have a big Irish Cup final to look forward to, and they pretty much do have 7th and that backup plan of the European playoff in the back pocket. But they wobbled on Saturday. They had numerous wins in the row, and they go to Shamrock Park on Saturday and they get beat 2-0. Some good goals from the Ports. They've probably scuppered themselves. Yeah, they've scuppered themselves really due to that Carrick result a number of weeks ago, because for Portadown to get 7th, they'll need Cliftonville to lose to lock all, and for then Portadown to beat Ballymena on the final day of the season. So there is intrigue there. Unfortunately for Portadown, a draw there and a win for them. A draw for lock on Cliftonville doesn't help them because the goal difference is just crazy. So that's unfortunate. But look, this 7th place will be locked in, not just due to a couple of games, due to a whole season. But yeah, let's talk about those goals. That UKEC one, that looked like it was going and going and going and going, and would have just kept on going if there wasn't a net in the way. It kept rising. He hit that so sweet.
I mean, I haven't scored like one like that myself in many a year, Peter, so I had to take my hat off, and even Fife as well. I think, do you know what the strange thing is? I talked earlier about an occasion. Fans come out for an occasion. I think it was the same weekend last year. That stand was packed in Shamrock Park for the game against Dundela, where they went up from the championship, the excitement that created within the town of Portadown. That was the occasion. And this was an end of season game, and I saw the highlights, and very few Cliftonville fans there, and the opposite stand with the Portadown fans was quite sparse as well. So it shows you how going up to the Premiership, was a great thing. But wouldn't it have been fantastic if Portadown were able to sort of drag that enthusiasm that saw them win the championship straight up to Shamrock Park, whereas every Saturday it would have been an all-ticket affair in that stand. So that's another thing that sort of intrigues me about local soccer. Sometimes, and I followed the Larne campaign in the championship as well, and some of those games they were playing in the championship at Inver Park, the stand was absolutely packed. They were getting big crowds. And then to win an actual championship and then to go up, well, Larne did sustain it, but you just see the way Portadown, the way the fan base can be fickle. And I just hope that's not the same with Bangor next year. Sometimes when you're top of the championship and going good, the fans can buy into it. But whenever you're 8th, 9th, 7th in the Premiership, sometimes that imagination and that sort of attraction goes. I felt sorry for Barry Green. Barry's back with Sportsound. He's actually doing it longer than I have. And he was at the dead rubber, as they call it, which was Loughgall against Carrick. And I'd say the enthusiasm within the actual ground would have been very hard to put a finger on Saturday. You're left with these dead rubbers at stages. And when there's nothing to play for, it's very, very, very disheartening, I can imagine, for players and for clubs when they see the gate receipts. But look, Portadown on Saturday, that is just typical of what Portadown have been capable of this season under Niall. And I also think that Jim Magilton was quite upset at the manner in which his players actually fielded on the day. And I think it sends out a warning too about Cliftonville's in and out form. And if they bring that into the cup final against Dungannon, I think there's only going to be one winner.
Let's talk about what's still on the line, and it's this 2nd place. Larne, Friday night, get a victory. Now, it's against very much a second string with a couple of real starters. For Linfield, I think talking about the 16-year-old scoring a goal for the Blues probably highlights that. Look, let's not question the quality. I mean, Braden Graham and Katic O'Neill are part of this new generation for Northern Ireland who are doing good things across the way, playing for some of the youth teams in England. I'm sure Mr. Thompson would like to be one of them down the line. But Linfield and their great run as they pushed maybe for the points total or equaling the best points total. That ain't happening as they succumb to a loss against Larne. And yeah, that makes it interesting for that second place. It's so strange. Larne have been this mirage where they could still finish second, but I've never really been impressed by them at any point this year.
No. Well, I haven't seen Larne at first hand, but I mean, observing them throughout the season, and of course, we had the European adventure was fantastic for the club, and it did impact on their ability. But they have come under Gary Haverin with a sustained form in the last number of weeks. And I watched the game on Friday night, and the young lad, Callum Thompson, he must have thought every birthday had arrived at once. He'd scored on live TV. He was the Johnny on the spot, and he put the ball away from close in. Fair play. And I thought Linfield would have basically would have built on that, but fair play to Larne. They come out. Conor McKendry, he got the winner, and they're looking for a draw next week. And I wouldn't bet against them not to do it. And where does that leave Glentoran? It puts them back into that skullduggery, looking for the other place. But the pressure's building at the Oval. We can tell that again. And we go back to the life of Brian, the Messiah. I've seen that many come and go. Declan was seen as he was getting great plaudits throughout the season, the middle part of the season. Glentoran went on the unbeaten run, but I don't know what's happened since. But if Larne do clinch that, it will be hats off, in my view, to Gary Haverin, for he has steadied the ship. And over the summer months, it'll be interesting the way that unfolds at Inver Park. But the European run, the money that's going to come from that will sustain again Larne's ability to compete next season. But still, the glaring point for me, Peter, is 23 points. Linfield are ahead at that stage. They probably took more out of that game with young Thompson scoring, David Healy's watching, sort of trying new things, young players out there. So they're cruising. I don't think it'll be too much, water off a duck's back for Linfield. Okay, the greatest number of points to win a league by. To them, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the Gibson Cup. And into Europe is what they set out to do. And now Larne are primed to take that second spot.
Shifting to the game on Saturday, because Larne's victory, then the ball was in the court of Glentoran, and they needed to win to reclaim second and give themselves advantage ahead of this showdown against Larne at Inver Park on Saturday. And they once again fumble in the big spot. It's not like they were shell-shocked while they were losing to a very capable Dungannon Swift side. All of a sudden, Larne are flipping the script. They knew the result going into this game, and losing at away to the Swifts at Steinmore Park, it's not a result that would be a complete shock. But when Glentoran need to step up and deliver, they continue to fail to do that. They continue not to have someone who has the leadership to drag them up and rise to the occasion of the big moment. And really, the only big moments that they really have stood up and put the other team's feet to the fire has been against Linfield.
Yeah, beating Linfield, that seems to be their one-off party trick throughout the season. And you can pinpoint where I believe that the air came out of the balloon for Glentoran. It was the defeat against Bangor, down at Bangor, when the team put...
They've looked wobbly ever since. They've got big results, but they've never looked totally assured and that they were back.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Hamlet, something rotten in the state of East Belfast, in my view. The fans, I looked at the Twitter reaction, this thing about you had one job to do, you had to go down, and this one match had to be elevated beyond every other game as being the most important, so you need to go out and play as if this is the last game you're ever going to play. Listening to Sports Sound on Saturday, one of the, at half-time, the comment was made that Glentoran weren't 1 yard off the pace, they were 2 yards off the pace. And then when you saw the highlights, you saw the ability of Dungannon to get in behind them and to take their goals as and when. That's a reflection on how good Dungannon are. And that's why I'm excited about the Irish Cup final. But Glentoran come away from there with a defeat, and they're now left with this scenario on Saturday where Larne have it. Basically, it's in their hands. And then we'll go to the next phase of that. If Glentoran don't make it on Saturday, the playoff scenarios, you have to ask yourself the question, what happens if they don't? And if they go into any playoff with the attitude those players had on Saturdays, and the criticism must be ringing around the Oval from those fans who are the hardest fans to please. But if I was a Glentoran fan and at halftime, those comments, what were made actually, that Michael Hammond was there, the comments about being 2 yards slow, how did that translate amongst the fans who were observing that? They're asking questions about the heart. I think that's what it is about this side. Why could they go through such a promising run in the middle of the season and ever since that Bangor game when a team put them under serious pressure and they collapsed? What has happened since? And okay, you can talk about investment. It's been ongoing for a number of years for in Glentoran. Where is the return for those fans who turn up Saturday after Saturday to support the team? And did we go back to 2009, Glentoran? That's the last time they won the Irish Premiership. That is what, 16 years of indifference in fighting, a few Irish Cups. But beyond that, where what is the ultimate end for this? I could be proved wrong, and Larne could mess up on Saturday, and Glentoran could come through. But at the end of the season, if there's nothing in that trophy cabinet, yet again, Glentoran are going to have serious meetings and discussions about what is actually not right or working at the Oval.
I saw last year, and I thought it was a very meek and meagre end of the season for Glentoran. Declan Devine came in and wasn't really able to get a tune out of that side, and he cut a frustrated figure, and he was almost like the school teacher coming in saying, you haven't bucked up your ideas and I'm going to sort you out. And you must say, for a large majority of the season, he was able to improve this team, and this could be, and getting second still in the cards. They just have to deliver, and he will be saying this to them: show me the colour of your money, players. Show that you want this. You want to secure European football for you guys to be playing in and beat Larne. Because if they do that, they still have that, and they're still within a chance to do that. But they've made it difficult for themselves because they must win away from home, while Larne know, you know what, and maybe that's more of a dangerous position to be in, where Larne know, we as long as we don't lose this, we're home and host. So
Yeah, it'll be a great atmosphere in Denver on Saturday. It depends what Glentoran side turn up. They could have a miraculous, mindset going in there and outplay Larne on the day and get that victory. But we can only go by the manner in which they've been going through not the playoffs, the top six there, their last number of games. And, the onus is there. The gauntlet's been laid down by Glentoran fans. You can't play any worse than what you did last Saturday. They're going up to Inver Park. The way Larne played last week against Linfield, they were like a team focused. So if it does go wrong for Glentoran, which I'd say the bookmakers would have Larne odds on to qualify, well, there's another session at the Oval of what might have been, and that's not what the Glentoran fans want.
and it will only add to the anxiety of Glentoran, where if they miss out on that, a playoff in itself, you would say, then they go in and they have to play against, they'll have to beat out the other teams that are there. Dungannon have got one over on them, and perhaps Cruise and Coleraine. I mean, they thumped the Cruise and beat Coleraine recently, but oftentimes it's very hard to repeat that trick. I don't love the chances of whoever misses out on that European place, but give it up for the Swifts. They've been impressive, not particularly recently since they got into the cup final, but that'll be a massive momentum boost. Lots of talk about a player I really like, and lots of people like the McGovern, and the mood music seems to be that this will be his one and done season for Dungannon, and full-time football will be what will whisk off a very talented player away. And a name who I thought was going to kick on this year hasn't, for a number of reasons, including injury. He's coming good come near the end of the season. It looks as though if they are without McGovern, they have a player ready to step into his shoes in Tomas Galvin. What a well-taken goal on Saturday.
Absolutely. A lot of those players were playing some people might say that, coming up to a cup final, they might lay off, but a lot of those players were actually trying to make a statement about the starting 11 for the cup final. And to me, I think not only will Glentoran go away from Steinmore Park on Saturday with a rude awakening, but I'd say over in North Belfast, the ability and the standard at which Dungannon were playing at, it's testament to Rodney McAree, but it also makes me think that this Irish Cup final, to me, Dungannon are very capable. And on the day, if they get the best team out and if they play with a passion, they're not sort of in, Windsor Park doesn't intimidate them. I think the Irish Cup final is there for the taking. And I'm basing that on the fact, for example, Cliftonville's result on Saturday and Cliftonville's results throughout the season, but you balance that with Cliftonville's ability to raise it for cup finals like they did for the League Cup final. But that's what makes it intriguing. But fair play to Rodney McAree, fourth place for the Gannon Swifts. Perennially, we've all gone down there for years, and they've always been a surviving team, but not thriving. This season, they have thrived under Rodney. And Paul Lehman, when we were talking on Saturday, he spoke so highly of Rodney McAree, his impression when he was at Glentoran, and I think that is great testament for what Rodney's done. And if they round the season off with the Irish Cup, I wouldn't be surprised.
Crusaders went out at home 3-0 against a continually inconsistent Coleraine side, spearheaded by young product Jay Boyd. I mean, he's a player who Cruise fans have hoped will step up as they've had their striker problems over the past 2 years or so. Could he be the man? Is he the heir apparent to Jordan Owens? And as much as he spent a majority of the past 2 seasons at Loughgall, having moments, but without really, in my opinion, having watched Loughgall, stepping up and establishing himself as that main man for a team lower in the division. Could this be a coming out moment for him? Hat-trick in the red and black of Crusaders, and someone, no doubt, next season will get his chance to say, I want to be the main man in North Belfast.
I think Declan Cadell, that's probably his prime business number one over the summer is to get him tied down. That was a very impressive win by Crusaders. I think they have the Indian sign over Coleraine this season, but how can the bandsiders...
Fifth time this year. That's, everyone talks about Glentoran and Enfield, and obviously it's a big game. Everybody's seen those very dramatic victories up until the final one, and but I mean, to beat a team 5 times, and imagine if they have to play against each other the way it works out in the European playoff. And of course, Cruise beat out Coleraine in the European playoff last year. I'm sure they do. Coleraine must be sickened every time they see the red and black of them.
It must be psychological. Oh no, those black and red stripes, we can't play against them. But it was very encouraging for Declan Cadell and, of course, Jay Boyd. And it's his work rate. He was singing about his work rate after the game and his ability to put the ball into the net. So that's a star on the horizon there in North Belfast. And very exciting times. Declan, of course, is only in his first season. He's consolidated, in my view, what Stephen Baxter has done over the years. It's been a very respectful season for Crusaders. So that's encouraging for fans of the red and black, the hatchet men, and to unearth somebody like Boyd is promising again moving forward. Declan's always going to have a couple of years to actually get his own brand on that, but if a player like that comes along, yes, that's another piece to the jigsaw. But for Coleraine, I'm sure that was a long ride back up the A26 on Saturday. You can write it off and say, oh no, it was Crusaders, but to lose 3-0, I know it's a big season next season for them. It's not great. It doesn't look good. And that's the big question mark again is sort of over Coleraine as we end this season.
Very, very poor at the back in some moments. Everyone has been waxing lyrical about Dunn. I singled him out last week. And, you can all watch the first goal for yourself, first minute.
Yeah.
That's something I feel like so a junior would give away there. Just did not have the concentration, and the other games there that were playing on Saturday, not anything on the line really, bar pride and 3 points. We talked about it there. Loughgall, Carrick Rangers 2-2. Always get goals when you see Loughgall down at Lakeview Park to get one final game there at home against Cliftonville. Not that'll really mean anything, bar Cliftonville's push for 7th and Portadown's want to claim that. But Carrick had the lead up until injury time, and then a player I think is going to bounce back in a big way next year. Benji McGee does another highlight reel play.
Indeed. But I talk about these comparisons. 2 years ago, I talk about the Portadown stand being packed. 2 years ago, when Loughgall got the trophy, when they won the championship, you couldn't have turned a sweet in your mouth in the ground. And we'll see again on Saturday, you see the highlights on the BBC, completely different 2 years down the line. I remember when they got the trophy, the big plans were for new turnstiles, turning it into a Premiership ground. For the first season, it was great, but I'd say it would have been pretty dispiriting for the players for both Carrick and both Loughgall on Saturday, because it had that dead rubber end of season, really lacking enthusiasm. And as I say, it's just interesting that whenever you're winning at the top of the championship, you can get people to buy into it. And of course, the story does the round on the internet about the club with the smallest population in Europe are not within their Premier League anymore, and it goes back to the team from the Faroe Islands. So that magic has disappeared from our league and has gone back to the Faroe Islands, with Loughgall being
Now,
demoted.
getting ahead of ourselves here. We talked a lot about Anna United and their push to get top flight football. They are a team from Portadown, not a million miles away actually from Shamrock Park. They're like the Dundela of Portadown, and really have no history of even being a team in the championship, bar maybe the past decade or so. Forget near the top of that division. Could you argue that if Anna United were to get into the top flight, definitely maybe in this century, as I like to use it as a bit of a marker, but could that be maybe the smallest side in relatively modern Irish League history to see a team play at that level?
Yeah, the thing
Like
about
we've seen Ballymallard come from nowhere, and we've seen Warren Point become an Irish League team, but they have at least some sort of connection to the area, and they are like that one
the
yeah, like the
nations
one
are
village
known,
team
yeah.
or the one club team. I mean, Annie United are just a part of Portadown. We haven't really seen a team like that. There isn't two teams in Ballymena, there isn't two teams in Lurgan,
Mhm.
so it would be a part of a town that
It's
has gone
it's
in.
interesting to say, I remember the first time being sent by Anna. It was the hardest place to find. Is it the Tandragee Road it's on?
I
Or
believe so.
And when I arrived at it, to me, it was just what you would call it. In fact, that day I was sent, they beat Glentoran in the League Cup at the BMG Arena. But Kieran McGurgan, I believe it's his father, is Brian McGurgan, which is the BMG Arena. He would have been the person behind it. I think he had an insurance business in Portadown. But you can see that it's been a dream that's been evolving, I believe, since the 1960s. And that dream has been to create a team that's competitive. But how that has been sustained, Peter, now that was 2016. They beat Glentoran, and ever since then they've been there or thereabouts within the championship. And that dream, if they did go up, I don't know whether one week you'll get in Ali United playing in Portadown, and everybody who would have went to Shamrock Park will go down there, but apparently they will play at Shamrock Park. Is it not a wee bit like Institute in Derry City? And to me, it's a wee bit like that, because I've been up at the Brandywell, and when Institute are playing, 300-400 people, but you see Derry City, they've a new stand, they're getting 4,000-5,000. To me, it's a wee bit more like that, whereas it's like the third cousin twice removed. Um, Within Portadown is Anna United. They're more worried about Glenavon, Portadown people are, or even Loughgall. But Anna, to me, is it's a strange one, but lovely club to go to, and a small but loyal band of fans. Wow, it really would sort of blow local football open, because I get a lot of people would say, "Anna United, we never really sort of we've heard of them, but we didn't realize that they were capable of actually going up."
Yes, it's like I don't like. I appreciate they're from an area in Portadown, but it's not in the same way where for example, you have Ballymacash, like that's from like an area
In
within
Lisburn, yeah.
Lisburn, and I mean the Lurgan Celtic meets Oxford Sunnyside, which are kind of same team in a way, not technically, but you can see there it would connect in with like the Craigavon area and be an alternative maybe to Glenavon.
Mm.
Anna are a team from Portadown who play in red and are like a mile away from Shamrock Park. It's a very very kind of unique thing. It's like obviously this community. I've been there. They have their fans and they have their whole youth setup stuff. And actually, of course, we're a former team of Niall Curry. So yes, there could be a situation where next season, if there's games being played on a Saturday, you can go see a team from Portadown playing in Portadown, playing red against somebody else at Shamrock Park, potentially. We'll see.
It's
We'll
bonkers,
see
and
how
I
that goes.
think I think the local media and the world media might sort of you thought that Loughgall was small, but this little sort of back road out of Portadown, their little club is sort of in the Premiership. But yeah, I think the number of people who say to me, Anna United, they're playing well. But if I asked them where Anna United's ground is, they would be very stuck to go and find it, because unless you're heading down that particular road, you're not going. You actually come across it. Oh my God, that's it there. But it is sort of a Kieran McGurgan project, and those players who has kept the Murrays, etc., have bought into it. And that statistic, Peter, 7 wins, which probably will become 8 on Saturday, is quite a run. And Carrick Rangers may beware.
A team who are and still, last time I checked, the big rivals for Portadown. It is Glenavon. They beat out a team that they'll be playing next week. I mean, Portadown and Ballymena. Glenavon have treated these past few weeks as a chance to blood some players like Ben Wilson, McGovern, and the likes. And they'll take a victory, but a game I can't imagine ignited the imagination of anybody there.
Yeah, well, Paddy's got to the end of his first season, and he has consolidated their position. To me, they would have been in a very dire situation. But a 2-0 win over Ballymena United, they'll take that. The Telegraph this morning, I believe the match got a 5 out of 10 rating. I always look at the ratings, and I thought to myself,
That's
if
generous.
that's 5 out of 10, that's putting a gloss on an end of season kickabout. And he would have sat down, and there's young talent. There's Chris Atherton and Harry Lynch, Paul McGovern, Ben Wilson. You know, Paddy's looking ahead. It's going to be a difficult summer to try and try and get players in, keep players, but he knows what he wants to do. He had that bounce, but does that bounce translate the next season? We shall see. For Ballymena United, those glory days of the start of the season, whenever they were actually top of the table, they're a distant memory now, and we're into the bread and butter at the end of the season, and Ballymena's position just above Glenavon. It made for a dead rubber, but it's a reality check that Ballymena fell so much from the start of the season, and it would have been. I mean, it was a bit like the Loughgall game for Barry Green. I think it would have been very difficult to try and sort of get much excitement out of the game there at Mornview Park on Saturday.
Before we skim across the final games of this season's schedule, game week 38. Reporting from the Sunday Life over the weekend, Windsor Park is to get a name which I'll not be mentioning on this podcast if it's true. The Clear Twist National Stadium at Windsor Park is what is being suggested and is being reported. Could be inked. Modern football, eh? Barry Flynn naming rights.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, it's called now the National Stadium at Windsor Park. Always been known as Windsor Park. Um, it's the same as the the championship. I haven't said player fit all season. It's just the championship. It's the championship. It's just literally words being added, and there's going to be income to the Irish Football Association from it. It's the life and the times that we live in, where the world is driven by sponsorship. It's going to be the most complicated actual set of words to put to Windsor Park. But look, if it's making people money and it's bringing money into the game, well, that's the way of it. But you know, I recall going back years, some people thought, oh, these adverts on shirts will be the end of the football as we know at Liverpool, where Hitachi. And now, if I go and watch the snooker later, even the snooker players are coming down with advertising. It's just the way things are. And we'll go forward. And I always thought the Clearwater Irish Cup was a bit of a mouthful, but the new Windsor Park will be quite a conundrum.
Yes, that name that I mentioned once and potentially only time I do that is connected. It's a drink. It's a beverage, and yes, it doesn't totally roll off the tongue. But hey, that doesn't always have to. And if someone wants to pay the money and the IFA is like, let's make it work, then hey, let's make it work.
Mhm.
And good luck to you, if that's the plan. But I mean, we saw some very big historic like stadiums in this country and other sports. Lansdowne Road
Yeah,
get
the
renamed, it got
Aviva, yeah.
rebuilt. The Aviva, which is one out. I would argue that is definitely something that that has been adopted broadly. I mean, you even might use that place. How many people still call it the Odyssey? As a arena. Ravenhill. It's definitely 50-50 for do people call it the I'm talking about the Ulster Rugby Stadium.
Mhm.
Do they call it by Ravenhill or do they use a sponsor name? So you never know. We could be going, oh yeah, remember that was called Windsor Park. But I doubt people of our vintage, Barry, will sternly, maybe even begrudgingly, still calling it that, even if all the
Well,
cool
the one
kids
thing is,
call
I
it
always
that.
thought Solitude was a strange name for a football ground because up until a certain age, I thought people went to Solitude because they wanted a bit of peace and quiet, because not many people turned up to watch Cliftonville. But it's an interesting name, of course, named after the stately home that was in the Waterworks Park. But Solitude, it's a lovely name, isn't it? But I wonder what they could add to that sort of top of the road taxis, Solitude Stadium or something. It remains to be seen. Jimmy's chippy. But it's good the way the Irish football is now in a position to get bigger. You know, people coming in to give them 5-year deals. So yeah, look, it's all part of moving the process forward and competing out there.
Well, a game that won't be played at potentially, I don't know, the Maple Syrup Solitude Arena. It's a game that's being played down at Lakeview. We talked about that before. Loughgall, Cliftonville. I guess we could pretty much just go through what the games are happening and how much is really on the line. Yeah, so it's Loughgall, Cliftonville in B, if we can build ourselves up to A. Portadown against Ballymena, and then Carrick against Glenavon. How much do Carrick play their big boys in anticipation of either Anna or the Welders? You don't know. They don't want to get caught cold. Glenavon will probably continue to play their youth because they are locked into 10th now, I recall. Portadown against
Mhm.
Ballymena, you would imagine just the way Ballymena have fallen off a cliff recently. I
Mhm.
appreciate Jim Irvin has been rattling the cages, but he's not got much reaction from his players. Maybe pride will be the difference, but Portadown should, or at least by all accounts, should go for it and should win out that game at home. All these games on Saturday at 5:30. I mean, you could probably count the amount of times we've had 6 games all being played at exactly the same time this season.
Mhm.
Would you even get? I don't have this number, by the way, so I'm not trying to test you, but is it even in double figures? I would doubt it's over 5 times this has happened this year.
No, I think the BBC game on a Friday night, that's been pretty constant throughout the season. So that's left us with five. Portadown have gone for that 5:30 slot as of Larne on a number of occasions. And you know that has impacted on the programme on a Saturday. Also, you had a few Sunday games. But Jared Lawler has said we need to look at making a weekend of this. I think he quoted the Six Nations, the way that used to be every Saturday, those rugby games were played at the same time. And now your Friday, make a whole weekend of it, maybe not Sunday. or Sunday evening, as some people have mentioned. But those games on Saturday, if I look at that bottom six, those games, I just say to myself, I can't really see anything. Cliftonville will not want to be risking anybody ahead of the cup final or be ahead of maybe any playoff situation. Loughall, Carrick, Glenavon, Ballymena, Portadown. This is just let's get the season over and let's get down to the beach, or for Cliftonville, let's refocus on the Saturday after. I've always found the last Saturday of the season on Sports Sound has been the driest Saturday because you are trying to make excitement out of games where there is nothing there. And if you listen to the show, you can see it's very hard sometimes to actually get any excitement or inject into it because I think the players, a lot of them, Peter, just go, let's get it over with and let's get away. And the reason they're all being played at 5:30, I'm assuming there's a lot of teams will go out for a drink in the evening, the season's over. So yeah, it's going to be very difficult. All the championship games will be over by 5 o'clock because they're at 3 o'clock. So any excitement of Bangor getting the trophy may, it'll not be, the program will not be on. But yeah, the bottom six, just let's get it over is what the managers are saying. Let's see what happens, and then we'll think about next season.
Dungannon go against Crews, which will have implications on seedings, can we call it that? Obviously league positions, but more realistically in real terms, it'll be seedings for that playoff. If, of course, Dungannon are even at. So, I mean, everyone will want to avoid Sick that's currently occupied by Coleraine. You can see now that Linfield have ended their streak. They go up to Coleraine. How many of their big names will be played? I can't imagine many. So, Swifts Crews, again, at Stagmore. It'll probably be a game for an hour, and then it will trickle out, especially from a Swifts point of view. And then the game that will have all the drama potentially, or at least we'll have everything on it. It's Larne against Glentoran. It's two teams who'll go hell for leather on it. I think this is going to end up 1-1, meaning Larne gets second.
I couldn't argue with you, Peter. I think if Glentoran do come back and get the victory on Saturday, and I'll imagine they'll bring a big crowd up to Inver Park, but the way Larne played last week against Linfield, they seem to have their mojo back. They didn't. They just persevered, and they had the players to beat Linfield in the end because I think the Blues wouldn't. They took the lead. They're a very proud team of their record this season. But Larne plugged away. They changed it a bit, and they got the result they wanted, which is set up this game for Saturday. Glentoran, if they'd have won last Saturday, it would have been the same position, but they would have had a 1 point advantage over Larne. But it's going to be intriguing. It'll be like a cup final because for both sides, there's no fallback. Well, there is the fallback, but they don't want that. It's on the day they want to do this. Glentoran might surprise us. They might sort of show that last week was an aberration. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that on Saturday because I have the Saturday off.
I also have the Saturday off when it comes to the games. I won't be at any games on Saturday. However, with the games being played at 5:30, if you tune in at the usual time around 3 o'clock or so, there'll be no sports sound. But you will be hearing me on the radio, I can say, as I will be looking after things on Radio Ulster between 3 and 5 o'clock this Saturday, playing tunes, so get your requests in. And this is probably not a bad time to say that, like all of us, when the Irish League ends, there'll be no sports sound on this summer until it comes back in August. Obviously, sports sound will be away. Sports sound will become its own thing for a while between 2 and 4. And you're probably going to guess what I'm saying. Going to say right now, between 4 and 6 this summer, I'll be presenting my own show on Radio Ulster. It's going to be music. It's going to be crack. It's going to be fun. So you thought you got rid of me. Yeah. Kick a match will be gone. But Peter on the radio will not be. So from spinning scorelines to spinning lists. Only for you. Only for you, Barry.
Peter, I can't
For taking
congratulate you enough because I think you've got, it's not an insult to say, you've the voice for it, and getting behind the decks will bring you to another level. Fair play to you.
Do I have the content? Let's all hold hands and walk into the void together. So I'm going to have a little special show on Saturday. It's not really the full launch of my series. That series will start on the 10th of May. This one, a little bit more off. We'll be playing songs that connect, maybe running, exercise, whatever motivates you. The Belfast Marathon, it will only be a week away or so from this weekend. So please join me then. But Barry, I've squeezed a lot of juice out of the contributor lemon.
And at this time of the season, it really is. We're down to the last drops. It's been a long season, Peter, and we can see the horizon. It's exciting. It's always
Thank you, Barry. Until what is likely to be next season. Yes, all those things I said are in fact true. I'm not going to be in Sports Sound this week. Sports Sound will in fact be later this week, of course, assuming you're listening to this in the week that it was out, and you know it's this Saturday we're talking about. And I am going to be on the radio, except not talking about football, playing tunes. Got my own show for the summer. Isn't that fun? I'm sure I'll talk about it between now and the final few episodes, which I have, and I do have a couple of more episodes to go before the end of the season. Next week should be a fun one. It's a bit of a new episode, which I'll add to the end of season repertoire. And in 2 weeks, it's the biggie. It's the season review, aka I'm playing all the predictions that I had, Ross had, and Joe had from around the grounds. We did at the very start of the season. We're going to reflect, have our thoughts, have our emotions, have our feelings, and accept the things that we said, and eat some humble pie. And, you know, I'll gloat. I think I slightly got it right. Until then, goodbye, and I'll see you again next week and beyond.